Persian Gulf, Strait of Hormuz, 2:47 a.m., pitch black. The heat is oppressive, hanging over the water like a wet blanket, even in the dead of night. The ocean is calm, an endless sheet of black glass reflecting the stars. Cutting through the silence is the USS Gerald R. Ford, CVN 78. The newest, most expensive, most lethal warship ever built by human hands, 100,000 tons of American steel. 2A, 1B nuclear reactors humming deep in the hull. 90 aircraft sitting silent on the flight deck, wings folded, waiting for the sun. 4,500 sailors are on board. Most are sleeping. The few on watch in the Combat Information Center are drinking stale coffee, their faces illuminated by the green and blue glow of radar screens. They are transiting the most dangerous choke point on Earth. To the naked eye, the Ford looks invincible, a floating city, but to the Iranian commanders watching from the shadows of Qeshm Island, it looked like something else. It looked like a target. At exactly 2:47 a.m. and 12 seconds, the silence died. It didn't start with an explosion. It started with a sound on the passive sonar arrays of the USS Ramage, the destroyer-riding shotgun on the Ford's starboard flank. A hiss, a tear in the water. Vampire, vampire, underwater contact, bearing 035, high-speed screws. The sonar operator's voice cracked, cutting through the calm of the command center. Speed. God, speed is 200 knots. 200 knots is impossible for a propeller. But these weren't propeller-driven. 4 Iranian Hoot supercavitating torpedoes had just launched from the darkness. Russian-designed, Iranian-built. They create a gas bubble around the projectile, eliminating friction, allowing them to travel underwater faster than a Formula One car. Range, 4,000 yards. Impact in 40 seconds. Alarms screamed across the strike group. General quarters. Brace for impact echoed through steel corridors. Tehran believed they had just checkmated the United States Navy. They believed that in less than a minute, the USS Gerald R. Ford would be a burning wreck, listing into the oil-slicked waters of the Gulf. They believed they had set the perfect trap. They were wrong. What happened in the next 14 minutes didn't just save the carrier. It turned the Persian Gulf into a graveyard for the Iranian Navy. This is the story of the ambush that backfired. The night Iran tried to sink the Ford, and the morning they woke up with no Navy left. Let's rewind 12 hours. Bandar Abbas, Naval Base. 2 p.m. General Hossein Salami, commander of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Navy, was standing over a digital map of the strait. The intelligence was solid. The Ford was coming. For months, Tehran had been looking for a way to break the stranglehold of American sanctions. They needed a victory. They needed to show the world that the Persian Gulf belonged to them. They couldn't win a fair fight. The U.S. Air Force would obliterate them. So they planned an unfair one, Operation Hormuz Thunder. The plan was a masterpiece of asymmetric warfare. It relied on the geography of the strait. At its narrowest point, the shipping lanes are only 2 miles wide. A carrier strike group is massive. In those waters, it can't maneuver. It's a caged beast. The Iranian plan had 2 phases. Phase 1, the Hammer. 4 Ghadir-class midget submarines would sit on the ocean floor, completely silent, running on battery power. They would wait until the Ford passed directly over them, then fire high-speed torpedoes at point-blank range. Phase 2, the Anvil. As the carrier took on water and slowed down, a wolf pack of 18 fast attack craft hidden in the coves of Larak Island would swarm out. Missile boats, gunboats, suicide drones. They would overwhelm the American destroyers with 40, 50, maybe 60 targets at once. Tehran calculated the odds. They accepted that they would lose ships, but if they could sink a U.S. supercarrier, it would be the greatest military victory in Iranian history. It would break American political will. At sunset, the order was given. The submarines slipped out of port. The attack boats dispersed into the coves. The trap was set, but Iran made 3 catastrophic mistakes. First, they underestimated the silent service. Iran assumed the U.S. Navy fights on the surface. They looked at the aircraft carrier and the destroyers and thought, that is the threat. They forgot about what they couldn't see. They didn't know that 48 hours ago, 2 Virginia-class fast-attack submarines, the USS Delaware and the USS Colorado, had slipped into the Persian Gulf ahead of the carrier. These aren't Cold War relics. These are apex predators. While the Iranian Ghadir submarines were moving into position, the USS Delaware was already there, hovering in the thermal layers, listening. The Virginia-class has the most advanced sonar suite in human history. The large aperture bow array can hear a wrench drop on a deck plating 5 miles away. The Delaware tracked the Iranian subs from the moment they left the pier. They knew their speed, their depth, and their heartbeat. Iran thought their submarines were invisible assassins. In reality, they were being stalked by a ghost. Second, they failed to understand the network. The Iranian commanders believed that if they hid their 18 surface ships behind the rocky cliffs of Keshem Island, American radar couldn't see them. In 1990, that was true. In 2026, it is suicide. The USS Gerald R. Ford isn't just a ship. It is a floating supercomputer. It is the node of a network that includes space assets, drones, and aircraft. High above the Gulf, a U.S. Space Force satellite with synthetic aperture radar was painting the coastline every 90 minutes. It saw through the darkness. It saw through the camouflage nets. It picked up the heat signatures of 18 diesel engines idling in the coves. Simultaneously, a MQ-4C Triton drone was orbiting at 50,000 feet. It was vacuuming up every electronic signal. Every time an Iranian captain radioed his wingman, every time a radar system did a test cycle, the Triton logged it, triangulated it, and sent the targeting data directly to the fire control computers of the USS Ramage. The Iranians thought they were lying in wait. The Americans had them gridlocked before the sun even went down. Third, and this was the fatal error, they miscalculated the rules of engagement. Tehran banked on American hesitation. They believed that the U.S. Navy would not fire until fired upon. They thought they could get to within 1,000 yards before the Americans would risk a diplomatic incident. They didn't know about Operation Iron Box. Because of the heightened tensions, the President of the United States had signed a classified standing order for this specific transit. It gave the strike group commander, Rear Admiral Sarah Hunt, pre-authorization. The order was simple. Any aggressive maneuver, any radar lock, or any opening of torpedo tubes within 10 miles of the ford is effectively a declaration of war. Do not wait for impact. Eliminate the threat. Iran thought they were playing a game of chicken. They didn't realize the ford had removed the brakes. Back to 2:47 a.m., the 4 Hoot torpedoes are in the water. They are screaming toward the ford at 220 miles per hour. A cloud of steam trails behind them. On the bridge of the carrier, the officer of the deck watches the distance close. 3,500 yards. 3,000 yards. To the Iranian commanders watching their radar screens on the coast, this was the moment of triumph. The torpedoes were running hot and true. The carrier was too big to miss. But on the USS Ramage and the USS McFall, there was no panic. There was only the cold, rhythmic precision of the Aegis combat system. Admiral Hunt didn't blink. She looked at the tactical display, saw the red vectors of the torpedoes, and saw the 18 surface ships emerging from the coastline to join the fight. She grabbed the handset. Batteries release. Execute. The trap was about to snap shut, but not on the Ford, Persian Gulf. 2:47 a.m. and 42 seconds. The 4 Iranian Hoot supercavitating torpedoes were now 2,200 yards from the hull of the USS Gerald R. Ford. Traveling at 220 miles per hour, they covered the length of a football field every single second. A wall of white water and superheated gas tore through the darkness beneath the surface. On the bridge of the Ford, the impact alarm was a continuous, deafening shriek. Brace for shock. Brace for shock. In a conventional war, against a conventional navy, this is the moment the carrier dies. A 500-pound warhead impacting the rudder or the screws at that speed creates a hydraulic hammer effect that snaps the keel like a dry twig. But the U.S. Navy had prepared for exactly this weapon. They didn't try to outrun the torpedoes. They didn't try to jam them. They killed them. The USS Ford is the first carrier equipped with the Surface Ship Torpedo Defense (SSTD) system, specifically the countermeasure, anti-torpedo, CAT. As the Iranian weapons crossed the 2,000-yard threshold, the system took over. No human reflex is fast enough. The computer calculated the intercept vector in 3 milliseconds. From the sponsons on the port and starboard sides, 6 interceptors launched. These aren't big weapons. They are small, 6.75-inch hard-kill projectiles, agile, terrifyingly fast, designed to find the noise of an incoming torpedo and collide with it head-on. The underwater collision didn't sound like an explosion. It sounded like the ocean cracking open. 4 massive geysers of white water and steam erupted 800 yards off the Ford's beam, shooting 200 feet into the night sky. The shock waves slammed into the carrier's hull, ringing the steel like a bell, knocking sailors from their bunks. But the hull held. The Hoot torpedoes were vaporized. The checkmate move had failed. And now the Ford was angry. 2:48 a.m. The surface slaughter. The 18 Iranian surface ships, the Sina-class missile boats, and Thondar fast attack crafts didn't know their torpedoes had missed. They were sprinting out from the radar shadow of Keshim Island, throttles wide open, eager to deliver the coup de grace to a wounded giant. They broke into the open water, 12 miles from the American formation. Targets exposed, the tactical action officer on the USS Ramage said. His voice was flat, cold, free to engage. Clear the board. The Iranian flotilla fired first. A volley of 20 C-802 Noor anti-ship cruise missiles. To the uneducated eye, 20 missiles incoming looks like the end of the world. To the Aegis combat system on the USS Ramage and USS McFall, it looked like a math problem, a very easy math problem. The AN Spy-6 air and missile defense radar tracked all 20 incoming vampires simultaneously. It prioritized them by speed and trajectory. Birds away. The vertical launch cells on the destroyers erupted. A ripple fire of SM-2 Standard missiles and ESSM Evolved Sea Sparrow missiles. This wasn't a battle. It was an execution. The interceptions happened 3 miles out, flashes of orange light in the black sky. One by one, the Iranian missiles disintegrated, turned into falling confetti of burning aluminum. Not a single missile got within 2 miles of the carrier. Then, the offense started. The order came down from Admiral Hunt. Saturate, no survivors. The USS Ramage didn't waste million-dollar missiles on small boats. It used the guns. The Mark 45 Mod 4 5-inch lightweight gun on the bow swiveled. The automated handling system slammed a high-explosive variable time HEVT shell into the breech. Fire, recoil, eject, reload. Every 2.8 seconds, a 70-pound shell left the barrel, traveling at Mach 2.4. The targeting computer, fed by optical sensors and surface search radar, walked the fire onto the lead Iranian missile boat. The first shell hit the bridge of the lead Thandar-class vessel. The structure simply ceased to exist. The second shell hit the fuel tanks. The boat didn't sink. It vaporized in a fireball that lit up the strait for 5 miles. But the real horror for the Iranian sailors was the air support. They hadn't realized that while they were focused on the carrier, the helicopter maritime strike squadron had deployed 4 MH-60R Seahawks. The helicopters were hovering low, just 50 feet above the water, masked by the darkness. Rifle. An AGM-114R Hellfire missile slid off the rail of the lead Seahawk. Laser-guided, precision, within 6 inches. It slammed into the waterline of a Hendijan-class support ship. The shaped charge punched through the hull, exploding inside the engine room. The ship broke its back instantly, bowing in the middle and sliding under the oil-slicked water. Target destroyed, shifting to next. It was methodical. It was industrial. One by one, the red icons on the tactical display turned blue, then disappeared. Boat 4, hit by 5-inch gunfire, sunk. Boat 7, hit by a hellfire, sunk. Boat 12, attempted to turn back to the island. Hit by a Griffin B missile launched from the USS McFall's deck launchers. Sunk. 2:52 a.m. The deep battle. While the surface burned, the underwater battle was ending. The 4 Ghadir-class midget submarines were blind. They had fired their torpedoes and were frantically trying to reload. They never heard the USS Delaware. The Virginia-class fast attack submarine was sitting in their acoustic blind spot, baffled by the thermal layer. Firing solutions locked on Sierra 1 through 4. The weapons officer whispered, "Shoot." 4 Mk-48, ADCAP, advanced capability. Heavy torpedoes were ejected from the tubes. These aren't just torpedoes. They are underwater drones. They are wire-guided, meaning the weapons officer steers them until the final moment. The Ghadir subs heard the high-pitched whine of the ADCAP's sonar going active. Ping, 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 panic. They tried to blow ballast. They tried to dive. Too late. The ADCAPs don't impact the hull. They are designed to detonate under the keel. The explosion creates a massive steam bubble that lifts the submarine out of the water and breaks it in half. 4 dull thuds echoed through the hull of the USS Ford. The sonar screens on the Delaware cleared. Sierra contacts lost. No noises. Target destruction confirmed. 2:58 a.m. The silence. The shooting stopped as abruptly as it began. 11 minutes. That's all it took. The Strait of Hormuz was silent again, save for the crackling of burning diesel fuel on the surface of the water. Debris bobbed in the waves. Life jackets, shattered fiberglass, a lone Iranian flag drifting in the current. The USS Gerald R. Ford sailed through the wreckage field without altering course. Its paint was unscratched. Its flight deck was pristine. The scorecard: Iranian assets. 18 surface vessels engaged. 18 destroyed. 4 Ghadir-class submarines engaged. 4 destroyed. 40 anti-ship missiles fired. 0 hits. 4 supercavitating torpedoes fired. 0 hits. Estimated Iranian casualties, 600 plus. U.S. assets: USS Gerald R. Ford, undamaged. USS Ramage, undamaged. USS McFall, undamaged. U.S. casualties, 0. Ammunition expended, 4 Hellfire missiles, 12 Griffin missiles, 48 rounds of 5-inch ammunition, 4 Mark 48 torpedoes. Total cost, $12 million. Value of Iranian fleet destroyed, $400 million. The aftermath and the truth. At 6 a.m., Tehran state media broadcast a glorious victory. They claimed the USS Gerald R. Ford had been heavily damaged and was retreating. They showed grainy, zoomed-in footage of a burning ship footage that was actually from a training exercise in 2015. They claimed 500 American sailors were dead. Crowds gathered in Tehran to celebrate. At 8 a.m., the United States Navy responded. They didn't issue a press release. They posted a video to X, formerly Twitter, and YouTube. It was the unedited feed from the optical sensors on the USS Ramage. High definition, thermal imaging. The world watched in 4K resolution as the Iranian Wolfpack was systematically dismantled. They saw the Hellfire missiles impact. They saw the 5-inch shells tear the missile boats apart. They saw the radar tracks of the intercepted Iranian missiles falling harmlessly into the sea. And finally, a drone shot from a global hawk flying overhead at dawn. It showed the USS Gerald R. Ford gleaming in the morning sun, steaming confidently at 30 knots, its wake cutting a white scar through the calm Persian Gulf. The caption was simple: freedom of navigation is not a request, it is a guarantee. The lesson learned that night was written in fire and steel. Iran learned that asymmetric warfare only works if the enemy plays by your rules. They learned that you cannot swarm a system designed to track 100 targets at once. They learned that a 5-inch gun doesn't care about your ideology. And most importantly, they learned that the USS Gerald R. Ford isn't just a ship. It is 100,000 tons of sovereign American territory. And if you try to sink it, you don't start a war. You end your navy. The strait remains open, the oil keeps flowing, and the Ford keeps watching. Target confirmed. Threat eliminated. Carry on.